welcome to a new episode of In Other Words with Danielle and Zara.
This is a podcast where we talk about a wide variety of different subjects, from the paradox of tolerance to trends that just don't make sense. So in other words, we talk about all the things.
Okay, so the local brand that I want to promote today is an Instagram account and online thrift store called Hand Me Over.
Ooh.
And so cool. I genuinely would buy probably every second item if it was all my size.
Yeah.
They have like 3 corduroy items right now that I just want to buy, but it's not my size.
Ugh.
Anyways, definitely check them out because not only are they a local brand, but also not supporting fast fashion. And we love that.
We love that.
So Hand Me Over, check her out.
Ooh. All right, so our topic today is a very interesting one, and we're talking about feminism.
Because we are female.
Yes. Do you consider yourself a feminist, Zara?
Yes.
Yes, me too. Okay, I just wanted to get that clear so everybody knows what our position is when we're talking about this. So feminism, in a very brief description, is the belief in the political, economic, and social equality of all sexes. So that is what it is at its basis.
Yes.
Obviously, there are different streams of feminism.
Yes.
You know, everybody has their different ideas of how it's going to play out, but that is what it comes down to at its basics. So I just want to talk about the different waves of feminism because I feel like often we refer to these different waves of feminism and nobody really knows what they are.
Yeah.
And there are the issues of the fact that the splitting the feminist movement into waves simplifies it a lot more than what it was, because it is very nuanced, quite complicated. Yeah. But basically, I wrote it down here. I did some research.
So
I know. So the first wave feminism started in the 19th and early 20th century, and that was mostly focused on women's rights.
Yes.
So the rights for women to have equal contract and property rights to their husbands, and the rights to vote. And this is quite American centric, because when women got the right to vote in 1919, when white women got the right to vote in 1919 in America, then that kind of symbolized the end of the first wave of feminism.
Yes.
And the second wave of feminism focused more on equality and discrimination. And this was predominantly from the 1960s to the 1980s. And what was quite important in this wave is the idea that the personal is political. So basically women were saying that their personal lives reflect the power structures that were in place in the greater sphere. And obviously in this wave we also got a different form of feminisms that emerged, such as radical feminism or liberal feminism. And the difference between these two, liberal feminism focused more on bringing women into the public sphere.
Yes.
So, and also it kind of focused a lot on the fact, or what they believe, that men and women can do the same things. And radical feminism, on the other hand, said the issue is the whole system.
Yes.
You can't just bring women in and expect things to change. You have to redo everything.
Yeah.
And they also said you can't just diminish the differences between men and women.
Yes. And that's the important thing, is I think a lot of people look at feminism and think that just because we are striving for equality that we're saying there's no difference. Yeah. But there is.
Yeah. I think it kind of defeats the point a little bit of feminism to say that there is no difference.
Yes.
Because then it kind of just gives you an excuse to go on with the way things are.
Yes.
When the reality is that the way things are do oppress women.
Yes.
So,
and also, just something to add, I think a lot of people are very closed off to the idea of feminism simply because it has fem in the word. And the reality is, yes, it's equality. So a lot of people are just call it equality. But the issue is that women have been oppressed. So in order to achieve gender equality, we need feminism.
Yeah.
So don't be offended by the word.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Embrace it.
Exactly.
Anyway, then just the third wave quickly, that started in the early 1990s, and that said,
when we were born,
I know.
90s kids, right at the end.
And then that looked at second wave feminism and kind of critiqued it because it focused mostly on upper class or middle class white women, rather than saying that, oh, there are differences between women. Because second wave feminism kind of put this universal experience of being a woman,
like
and
everyone are housewives.
Yeah, and that's just not the reality of our world. And so third wave feminism, we also saw the rise of intersectionality. So that's recognizing that race, class, gender, nationality, etc., they're all important when discussing feminism, because all these different things intersect with gender.
And feminism and the need for different things is different everywhere.
Yes.
Like, the world does not look like America.
Indeed. Can you believe it?
I know.
And then where we are now, I mean, there's like kind of disagreement. Some people say we haven't moved out of the third wave yet, but I think we're moving into a fourth wave, and that's also focusing way more on inclusivity and intersectionality, you know, bringing in the issue of trans rights as well, because traditionally trans women have been excluded from feminism, so that's becoming a thing now as well. And that's really the basics of what the feminist movement is.
Yes. I also think something that has now been brought into the light and has fallen into the topic of feminism is just the abuse of women, which we will get into.
Yes.
But if you didn't know, now you know.
Indeed. So we asked on our Instagram stories, like we did a bunch of questions on feminism. So do you want to just read out some of the answers? We can chat about it.
So these are specifically responses to people who weren't feminists.
Yes.
And so don't worry, we're not
saying names, no.
And we're not going to say names. We just want to speak about what they said and how we maybe disagree and explain ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, or even how we do agree.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this answer came from a male. Okay. So like, I'm sure that's not entirely what it is. My perception of feminism is that it's normally a very toxic idea that women need to be empowered and that women need to be equal or above men, which in society I feel is already true. But the whole movement is designed to show that women can do everything equally to a man, which I don't believe is accurate just due to how we are created. And equality in terms of rights is something I'm definitely for, but my problem with the movement is their message that men and women don't have significant differences or that women are just superior.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
I can understand where he's coming from. Yes. I think if, like, I'm not trying to attack or anything, but I think it is quite a naive way of looking at feminism, if you know what I mean. Because the idea that women are already equal or are already empowered in our world is frankly, like, that's just looking at maybe Western society. And I mean, Western society also certainly oppresses women. Yeah. But, like, for example, I'm not going to pretend as a white woman that I'm as oppressed as someone living in, I don't know, like rural Africa somewhere, you know, because there are different things at play there. And I also don't want to take on like a white savior thing over there. But anyway, so I think it's quite a naive way of looking at things. And I wouldn't agree that women are necessarily as empowered as men are.
No. And even I think to the extent of saying that they think women are already equal, if you like, it's very much only viewing it from a Western point of view, because a lot of women in the Middle East, for example, are heavily oppressed. Yes. So I don't think, if you look at it realistically, no matter who you are, you cannot say that women are equal or viewed equally.
Yeah, and like for sure there are places where men are oppressed as well. There are some very oppressive places. Yes. But if you just look at globally, like in terms of labor, for example, like most of the unpaid labor that is done in the world is by women form, it's like 50 to 70% of the bottom 1% is made up of women.
And the top 20, I don't know if it's top 10 or top 20, so don't come for me. Richest people in the world are men.
And just from an economic perspective, like it kind of just shows that there's not equality. And also I was going to talk about this later, but we can talk about it now. If we look at fast fashion or factories anywhere, women are often, especially in like I don't want to say third world country, like in developing countries, women are employed in these very bad conditions because they're kind of easy to take advantage of. A lot of women are living in such poverty that they have nowhere else to turn. And I mean, I wrote an essay recently on the sex tourism in Southeast Asia. And the reason that there are so many prostitutes in Southeast Asia is because they literally, it's either that or working in like a horrible factory. So women are like, well,
what do I,
exactly.
Yes. And again, understand that when we're talking about all of this, we're not denying the fact that men are also oppressed or that men are also taken advantage of, because it's a reality, the world is messed up.
But just like statistically speaking,
yes, basic facts, women are more oppressed, if you want to term it that way. Then another thing that was mentioned in here was just the fact that it's very toxic. And if we say it about we have extremists in any philosophy, any movement. So if we said that, for example, if I said that if I was going to base my Christianity on what I've seen certain evangelical churches, for example, then I wouldn't want to be associated with that. But I'm not going to say I'm not a Christian. And it's the same where it's like, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to support feminism, because feminism can be toxic. Yes. Anything can be toxic. Absolutely. So,
and then also just going to the idea that feminism denies that there are differences between men and women. It depends on the brand of feminism. Yes. Like I said earlier, like a lot of liberal feminists would look at diminishing the differences. But for me, for example, I'll say, okay, first of all, I do believe that women can do a lot of things that men can do. I think the reason that people think they can't is because they've been told that. It's not because objectively we can't. Like for sure, like men can build muscle a lot faster than women can. Yes. But is it true that men are better leaders? No. Is it true that like...
And if you want proof of that, just refer to the last million years of male leaders.
So I think a lot of these kind of gender roles are made up by us.
Yes. And I think it's important. We did do an episode on femininity and masculinity, and we spoke a little bit about that in that episode. So also check that out in conjunction with this one.
Indeed.
Yes. And then also something that I found interesting, and just so you know, I really don't want this to feel attacking at all. And just the fact that we receive such an open and honest response.
It's great. I really appreciate it.
So welcome. And also like just the fact that it can be hurtful as a man, I'm sure, to be almost like not oppressed, but like told like you are the problem. I would be hurt. It can be taken on personally, even if it's not a personal and more of a general statement. So I completely understand that. The one thing is it's a very toxic idea that women be empowered. I think it's so important that people are empowered in all spheres.
I agree.
But especially women, because this is what you said, especially in second wave feminism, is like social constructs affect everything. So if women are raised in homes or placed in environments where they begin to have internal like misogynistic views, it is going to affect them.
Absolutely.
They are going to believe the lies that they are not.
Yes.
They are not, they can't do certain jobs, they can't do certain things, they aren't as good as men. And so that's why I think empowerment is so important in feminism. Yes. And in everything.
Absolutely.
Unless you're empowering people to like kill other people, don't do that.
Don't do that. We're not doing that.
Yes. So, yes. For all you women out there.
You're so empowered.
You also, we empower you. That doesn't even make sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Cool. And, I mean, do you want to read the next one? Cool.
So this response came from a woman. Okay. I don't necessarily mean that feminism itself causes oppression, but what I've noticed with most feminists that I've come into contact with, and what I've seen happening in the very recent past, is that feminism is supposedly trying to create equal opportunities for both men and women, correct? Right. I love how this is like how you would speak. Yes, I love how this is written. But because women were suppressed in the past and didn't have the same opportunities available to them as men did, today's toxic half of the generation is trying to fix women's oppression, but in the same breath, actually causing oppression for men. A little example for this happening is that a few women are hurt by men, and now to fix her trauma, she goes and bashes the entire male species, calling them all trash, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting topic. especially with the rise of the men are trash movement or idea. But I think as much as I also don't really like the saying, I think it can often be more discouraging than...
It really can. It's like, so early on when we spoke about this, I often say that the people who are upset about men are trash are the same people upset with Black Lives Matter, because all lives matter. And at the end of the day, all men aren't trash, and like just to call a human being trash is a problem.
Yes.
But the difference is with the Black Lives Matter, it's empowering. It's a positive statement. Yeah. Whereas men are trash, it could cause more damage. Yeah. But at the same time, you can talk about the heart behind them.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I'm just going to speak from a South African perspective, because it became quite a big thing in South Africa, especially after the death of Uyinene in 2019. So basically, women in South Africa have a very, very high chance of being raped. We are the rape capital of the world. Like sexual abuse.
Just take that in.
We are the rape capital of the world. It's incredibly scary. And the reality is that most rapists are men. Most rape victims are women. It's a very gender-based crime. And the fact that women have to live their lives in fear, and most of us know someone who's been raped or has been sexually assaulted, or we have been raped or sexually assaulted. That is the reality of being a woman in South Africa. And so the Men Are Trash movement kind of brings this to light, the idea that men are being violent against women for literally no reason. And also, most women who say men are trash will acknowledge, a lot of men don't rape. Yes. For sure.
These are people that are married to men. They wouldn't be married to a man if they thought that he was trash.
But at the same time, it's recognizing that a lot of men don't hold their fellow males accountable. Yeah. And when you think about things that perpetuate rape culture, if you think about like locker room talk or pornography or whatever. Yes. Men don't want to hold their friends accountable. If someone says, "Oh, this woman is so hot, I just want to da-da-da-da-da to her," it's kind of like, haha, that's just boy talk, whatever. Yes. Like, no, these are all things that perpetuate this culture. Yeah. And people would rather not believe a woman and support their friend, rather, like, if a woman, you know what I'm saying? If a woman accuses a guy's friend of rape or whatever, then it's like, oh, she's just crazy, whatever. And the reality is that, I don't know, most of the time that a woman reports a rape, it's not necessarily false.
And here's the thing. I was saying, because we obviously had a pre-discussion before recording, and there is not much to gain from falsely reporting a rape. Because if our justice system was like super on the ball and they just like arrested all these rapists, which they don't do. If they did, then okay, maybe like, ooh, I want to get this person arrested or just like ruin them. Yeah. Then okay, let's falsely accuse someone of rape. But that doesn't happen. So there's genuinely nothing to gain. Yeah. First of all. Second of all, like, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that sexual harassment is also a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very easy to downplay someone's experience because, so what if he like touched your butt? Yeah. Like, he didn't rape you.
Like, no, it is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it all perpetuates this rape culture that we have in our society.
Yeah. So and I think the message, just to like, again, state the message is like, guys listening to our podcast, please hold your fellow males accountable for just what comes out of their mouth. Yeah. Because that's the start of it.
It is the start of it. And I think, I mean, both messages spoke about how feminism can oppress men. And once again, I really understand where both these people are coming from. Yes. But I think in a society where men hold the most power, that is the reality. Most of the world's leaders are men. Most CEOs or whatever are men, etc., etc. I don't think it's possible for women to oppress men. Certainly it's possible for women to hold prejudices against men.
100%. And we don't support that at all.
No. But does that mean that a man is oppressed? No. And also something that my cousin was saying, traditionally men have been the ones with all the power, right? Particularly white men, like in our kind of society. And so the moment where a white man, like when other people are getting empowered as well, the moment that they're not having all the privilege anymore, then you kind of feel like, am I being oppressed? you're not being oppressed.
Empowering someone, is not bashing or oppressing another person.
Yes.
And I think what you're saying is so important to understand, is that when we speak about oppression, we're speaking about it also from just a systematic, institutionalized issue.
Yes.
Like, the oppression is coming from the powers that be, not hate speech.
Exactly.
So again, we don't condone hate speech, but it doesn't necessarily add up to the oppression that people have been facing for centuries.
And the reality is that women are still very much underprivileged.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just talking about rights now. Like, yes, for sure, we all have the same rights, you know. But like, if you just look at family structures, for example, and interestingly enough, if you want to read up on Marxist feminism, it focuses quite a lot on like family structures. But you can see that in so many like of these personal lives, women are still being oppressed. You know, girls are withheld from going to school, or women are forced to do whatever, or like children and women are beaten up by husbands and fathers, and it's incredibly unfortunate. But these are like the so-called small things that go unnoticed, that contribute to the inequality of women. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And again, with the family structure, I'm going to get into something that I've just been particularly passionate about this last week, because I didn't ever think it was a thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we look at sex being for men. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Like, women like sex, but like, it's a guy thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a guy thing. It's easier for a guy. I don't want to get into this. It's weird. I haven't even had sex.
But that's also just a patriarchal idea, you know?
Come on. Exactly. And like, okay, so this has been my pet peeve for years, is there are a lot of places that offer free condoms. And by all means, like, have safe sex and, you know,
absolutely,
please.
You should.
But the fact that condoms are free, and that
most menstrual products are not.
Yes. And for me, like, that is whack. And I will say I'm very happy that we are now at a stage in South Africa, for example, that female products aren't taxed. But it's still like,
it's so expensive.
It's so expensive. And it's genuinely something that all women are going to go through.
It's not something we can control.
You're going to get your period.
And you have to.
Yes. And in certain just because of genetics, you have such severe periods that it can affect just the way you function. Yeah. So the fact that people, for example, are not getting an education or can't go to school for a week or whatever because of their period and because they can't afford
No, I know.
For me, that's wild. Like, you choose to have sex.
Yeah.
You don't choose to get your period. And then also, like, I know, and I don't know if this has changed, but I think it was like 2 years ago, I read an article where like the healthcare system in the US covers Viagra.
Yeah, that's wild.
But they don't cover birth control.
That's ridiculous.
Make it make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't
in
make
the
any
same
sense.
breath, statistics show that a lot more women than I realized are raped in marriage.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be this horrific rape. Like, any form of like sexual intercourse or anything without consent is rape. Having sex with someone under the age of 16 or whatever the national consent age in the country is rape.
It is.
But for a woman to be married, like, the wedding ring is not consent.
It's not consent. I also think that the idea that's kind of been perpetuated, maybe there's a little bit of truth to it, whatever, that men can't control their sexual urges is complete nonsense. And like you were saying...
And if you can't, then be better.
Yeah. But honestly, okay, to all the guys listening, do you not get offended that you're reduced to such like a primal animalistic kind of thing? Like it's just a man, he can't control himself, he sees a woman's shoulders and he just, you know, anyway.
His feet.
I know. No. Like, surely that's offensive. But anyway, and it also just kind of plays into the idea, like you were saying, that men want sex and women, like, it's not really a thing for them.
I'll do it.
Yeah, like, whatever, I'll do it to keep him happy, whatever. I don't really buy into that.
No.
And also, I saw a study and it said that if we just look at sexual urges or sexual desire, it differs more between like let's say between men than it does between men and women, and it differs more between women than it does between men and women, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So like you can't just make a blanket statement that men are always more horny than women are.
Yeah, and I also think, and this is something we can talk about in another episode, it's just like, I don't know, if I were a woman and I'd been violated in the past, I wouldn't want to even, that's a realm I wouldn't even want to step into.
No.
Because of past experiences. So, yes. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Because there are two like movements I want to ask you about.
So I just want to talk a bit about the patriarchy.
The damn patriarchy.
The patriarchy, because I think a lot of...
Do you want to define it?
Yes, the patriarchy. I wrote down a very nice definition. So the patriarchy is the male domination in the public and the private sphere, and it also describes the power relations between men and women, where men hold more power than women do. Yes. And I think what turns a lot of people off from feminism is that they believe that feminism is a men-hating movement. Yes. And that's not what it is.
No, we don't hate men.
No, feminism, it's more about going against the patriarchy.
Yes,
the system that has been set up that gives men more power than women. And feminism also recognizes that men are disadvantaged by the patriarchy as well. Yes. And I'm not saying in terms of like power or whatever, because, you know, men are definitely more privileged under the patriarchy. But if we look at these patriarchal ideas, right, that men have to be the providers of the family, that men can't express their emotions, etc., etc., these are things that are bad for men. It's the reason why men have such a high suicide rate. Yes. You know, and feminism is absolutely not for that. And I think this is important to note, because a lot of people will use these ideas to go against feminism, when the reality is that feminism is definitely concerned about these things. Yes. Because we want equality, right? Yes. We don't want men to be killing themselves and to be suffering. Like, we recognize that, you know, it's both of us, it's all of us against the patriarchy. It's not women against men.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask about my movements?
Yes.
Okay. The Me Too movement.
Okay.
Thoughts?
So the Me Too movement, that originated, it was like a Hollywood thing, very much.
A Hollywood thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So an actress came forward about how she had been sexually assaulted by a director, and she hashtagged Me Too, and then that encouraged a lot of other women to come forward.
Yes.
The amount of
women that came forward.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
Yes.
But, okay. So you're asking, what exactly are you asking?
Yes. So how do you think that this aids the feminist movement?
Yes.
And how do you feel about women coming forward about sexual harassment? Because the one thing that I was watching an interview with Judge Judy, and I mean, like, she is what many would term like such a badass woman, and she said the issue that she's seen with the Me Too movement is that it's reached an extreme where if someone takes a photo, like a male and a female, and he's, let's just say, in a position of power, and he puts his arm around her, that can be misconstrued.
Okay.
So how do we respond to that?
Okay. So one thing I do want to say, a lot of men, like men in positions of power, for example, have come forward and said, oh, they're so scared now because they feel like they're just going to be accused of sexual assault if they just touch a woman, and they're so scared of touching a woman. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you should think twice before you lay hands on a person. I don't care if it's a man or if it's a woman. I personally do not like it when someone, for example, moves past me and they put their hand around my waist, especially if it's a guy. I'm like, do you mind?
Yes.
And a lot of people in positions of power, they've been known to use this power and to get sexual favors from women. And often the only reason that women move up is because men only allow them to if they give them sexual favors. And I mean, there's a case with Fox News. I don't know, there's a movie called Bombshell, and that's about that. Crazy. And like, it's not an isolated event. And I think also, if you just look at sexual assault against women, like we were saying, most things that go reported, first of all, like, nothing really happens about it, unfortunately. No. And also, it's such a tiny percentage of accusations that are actually false. Yes. Like, I think it's 5% or even less. Yes. And if you just look at the greater scheme of things, it's like, surely we'd want to investigate all of these things.
Exactly.
One thing I don't necessarily agree with is the idea that like it's innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really always agree with it when people already just want to accuse a guy of being a rapist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think we need to take all of these accusations seriously. As seriously, if someone came up to you and said, hey, my car has been stolen, you wouldn't say, no, I don't think it has. You'd go and investigate, right?
Yes.
You know, and it should be treated the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
And yeah, what was another thing that you wanted to ask?
The Free the Nipple movement.
Okay. So, first of all, I just want to say that I think it's really dumb that breasts have been sexualized so much. I know, I get it. Like, I know it can be an attractive part of a woman's body, whatever. But the fact that these things that have literally been made to feed a baby, that is their purpose. I'm sorry. And they're literally lumps of fat. They're not some kind of like mystical, amazing thing, you know? And then also not a sexual organ. They're a secondary sex characteristic. It's the same as growing hair under your arms, you know? It's the same kind of thing, or growing pubic hair. It's the same. And I get it, like, it can be nice for people to look at, whatever. But I think it's dumb that women's bodies have been, like, policed so much because of their breasts, when it's literally, you know, it's like a thing that we just have. And I think it's also important to recognize that the sexualization of breasts is very much a cultural thing. And what I mean by this, for example, in a lot of European countries, a woman can go to the beach and take her top off, and it's not a big deal. And in a lot of African cultures, women just don't wear tops. It's not a big deal. That's just how it is. So we've definitely, in Western society, we've taken like breasts to be this amazing thing to look at, and they've become such a big thing, unless you have small ones, but yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, what do you have to say?
So for me, like, personally, I will always wear a bra.
I do not like bras. I often do not wear them, and I do not care.
I also don't like bras, but I'm just not comfortable showing my nipples. But I'm also, like, sometimes just not comfortable to wear a bikini, and call me just being oppressed by the patriarchy or giving into society.
It's also the idea.
It's a personal decision.
Yes, and also the idea that you need to show skin to be empowered. That is... We
are going to talk about that.
That is completely different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for that episode because... I can feel empowered and be covered head to toe.
You can, exactly.
But yeah, so the Free the Nipple movement, I think a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon without even understanding the feminism aspect of it. It was just like let's free the, and the guys are like, free the nipple. Freaking fools.
Fools, not for you.
So I appreciate the sentiment and stand behind the feminist ideas.
Yes.
I just won't free my nipples.
But that's okay. You don't need to.
Okay. I can't wait to do an episode on like the objectification of women.
Yeah.
It's something I'm very passionate about.
So basically, Zara, do you think feminism is still necessary and relevant this day?
Yes. The reality is, even like one thing we didn't speak about is equal work.
Yes.
For equal pay.
Yes, absolutely.
It makes no sense that two people do the same job, but because the one is a man and the one is a woman, that they're not paid equally. And you can argue with me all you want. Just read the stats. Look at people's pay statements. Actually ask people. Like, even like doctors. Male doctors are paid more than female doctors.
It's wild.
Just
but also, do you know,
to me.
A lot of people feel more comfortable going to a male doctor, like in terms of like just being a GP than a woman doctor, because it's like, oh, well, he obviously knows what he's talking about.
Who are these people?
Silly people, you know. And I think when we think about feminism, we also absolutely need to just look at the abuse of women, be it in the workplace, just in general, in their private lives. Like, these are all important things that need to be brought to light and they need to stop. And also, like I was saying, the fact that globally, women, especially in developing countries, we can't ignore the fact that Black women, Latina women, Asian women, etc., they are often incredibly oppressed by like Western companies who go and they make them work for them in like fast fashion industries. It's really awful. And the matter of the fact is that it is a lot of women who are brought into that kind of work, and it's really bad. And I think just also in like a lighter sense, women just aren't taken seriously. and we also spoke about this in our masculinity and femininity episode.
Yes.
Like the idea, like let's just talk about period pains, for example, or like giving birth. A woman will say, hey, I've had a really horrible experience giving birth, or I have really bad period pains. And there'll always be some guy over there to discredit her pain and say, it's not as sore as being kicked in the balls, though. And it's like, I don't think you can really compare them.
Telling me that the issue is that I'm PMS.
No.
Yes, I am. It's real. Those emotions are real.
Yeah.
The hormones that females deal with.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you irrational. And that's really something that irritates me, is the idea that women are irrational. Because that just doesn't make sense.
We have spoken about that in masculinity and femininity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And also, I was going to say something else. There's really a lot to say.
There's so much. Also, if you're wondering why we haven't spoken so much about just gender roles, like we did speak about that quite a bit in our other episode.
Yes.
The other thing that a lot of people have brought up, men specifically, it's just the one thing they can cling to is, I get 4 days paternity leave and a woman gets 9 months.
We hate that.
Don't.
It's not 9 months, is it? 3 months?
No, that's you're pregnant for 9 months. You get 3 months, sometimes 4, depending on who you work for.
Yeah.
Do you know what doesn't solve that issue? Telling women they need less maternity leave.
We say give men more paternity leave.
Exactly. And the reality is that 100%, I think fathers are definitely often seen as like secondary parents, which I don't necessarily think is the case.
No.
However, women's bodies and hormones need to adjust.
Absolutely.
And like
you've
rebalance.
Just made a whole human.
Exactly. And that human is now dependent on you physically as well as emotionally and socially and economically and every other league.
Exactly.
So
but
just
also
give fathers more time. Don't ask for less maternity leave. That doesn't solve the problem.
But I think such an issue is like women's work in that sense. Like it's just not valued, you know? Like a lot of companies, for example, won't want to hire a woman because it's like, oh, well, she might get pregnant. And like that's actually not legal, but still a lot of companies still do it, unfortunately.
Yes.
But also if we just look at care work, for example, people make fun of women for wanting to be stay-at-home mothers. And it's like, it's such an important job, first of all, a difficult job, and it should be valued.
Yeah.
And even if we just look at the unpaid care labor that happens around the world, you know, women who will look after their parents or grandparents or whatever for absolutely no pay, and they will still go and do their normal job, come home, and then they do all of this care work, and it's completely undervalued, unpaid. And it's like, is that right? Anyway, fun story. A woman in China, her husband divorced her and she sued him 4 years of unpaid labor, and she got paid for that. Yeah.
Good for it.
Yes. But yeah, these are all things, I think, if you still don't agree that we need feminism, I don't know, maybe I can do another episode.
Yes. I feel like have we been speaking for longer than normal? If we have, sorry, but these are important things.
Oh, one last thing. We didn't speak enough about intersectionality.
Okay, we'll have to do another part and we can have a guest on for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Intersectionality
In fact, we might even
is so important.
invite a guy over too, because by the way, men can be feminists too if they believe in equality of the sexes.
Indeed, it's a whole thing.
Okay guys, we'll see you in the next episode. Shout out to Graphic Studios for dealing with us.
Yes, and goodbye.
Bye bye.